Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 370. Today, my buddy Vic is hosting this episode, sitting down talking with Jamie Gilgen, who was off of my radar, and boy, was that a miss. YouTube algorithm, come on. Because when Vic sent me Jamie's channel, I was floored and a little confused because she's got a lot of views. Y'all, her videos are incredible. The cinematography is incredible. Projects are incredible. The videos are engaging. Everything about them, thumbs up. Go Jamie. So if this is as far as you get, please go check out Jamie's YouTube channel. Link in the show notes, obviously. Before we get started, unfortunately, the Woodworking Tour of England with Mike Pekovich and John Binzen has been canceled. I don't know the whole story, but I do know that in its place, this one is a banger, y'all. It is a woodworking tour of New England, so Connecticut, Massachusetts, wandering up to Maine, some New Hampshire, and it's with John Binzen, which is reason enough to go, but John Binzen got Al Breed to be a co-host. I can't tell you how much that means to me, how big of a deal that is for me. That is one of the preeminent woodworkers that it's a woodworking tour that is going to museums, and Al's got pieces in those museums. I mean, that's Al Breed. So the tour's in October. Head on over to findwoodworking.com/trips. Check it out. This is, to me, a once in a lifetime. I honestly cannot imagine a better tour to go on if you're a geeky woodworker like me. And if you're not, I'm not sure why you're listening to this podcast, because you have to be a geeky woodworker to listen to Vic and me. And you seem to be. So, all right. Findwoodworking.com/trips. Check it out, please. Al Breed. But right now, come on, Vic. What you got?
So you have a pretty awesome YouTube channel. And so, and that's partly because you and your partner run it together. So you're the woodworker.
That's right.
And Rena does, well, everything else.
Everything else, yeah.
So you basically get off with doing 20% of the work.
That's right. Yeah,
it's
that's what
perfect.
I always say. Yeah, it's about 5 times more work to be the editor.
And if you really like the video that you're seeing right now, well, you can thank Rena for that, because she's behind the camera, making sure we look great. So, okay. Anyway.
As good as possible.
As good as possible. That's right. So you have a YouTube channel. And so on there, there's a really wide range of topics on there. And I don't know if you meant it to be that way or not, but for me, I think it basically chronicles almost like a sort of progression as you are woodworking and you're doing different projects and you're upgrading things. And so tell me a little bit about what that was all about.
Sure. So I always really loved woodworking. When I was a teenager and I was in high school, there was an old guy on my road who had a garage, and he always had the garage door open and lots of wood was in there. And I thought it was so cool. So I took a woodworking class at the high school. This was in London, Ontario.
Oh, okay.
And that was when that was my first experience woodworking. And I distinctly remember the shaper. We weren't allowed to use the shaper.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. Can you imagine there was a shaper in a high school shop class? That's scary.
I know. Terrifying.
That was the first time I really sort of got introduced to woodworking and got to actually make something. I really like animals, and so I made an enclosure for an iguana.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. That was my first woodworking project.
Of course, yeah. I actually do remember something I tried to make when I was younger, and I was probably 9 or so years old. And in my head, I had this image of a wall cabinet with beveled glass panels with sort of fit into this diamond sort of pattern. I had this whole plan in my mind.
Right.
And
at what age?
I was 9, but
right.
So then I'm I'm gonna go do it. So my dad had a couple hand saws and whatever. He's not a woodworker, so he didn't really have woodworking tools, but he had a hand saw.
Amazing.
And so in my 9-year-old mind, I'm this should be easy. So I go down with a hand saw and I made a couple cuts, and I realized, oh, this is the difference between what I saw in my mind and what I was able to actually do was so far off that it just I just gave it up. I quit. So
Well, it's funny because you, like, I feel like going through all the projects that you've done on the YouTube channel, like, I feel like you throw yourself at almost every project just like that, where it's like, you don't know it's supposed to be hard. You're just being like, I got this idea in my head and I'm just going to like figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, which is refreshing for me because like, I'm the opposite. I will sit there and like think and think and think and think and then like not do anything.
Yeah.
And so, so like, I feel like you're the way you still approach woodworking that way. Even though like now you have like a nice shop and you have like the tools and you have the ability to do it. So the YouTube channel for me, like I was saying, it really chronicles sort of like how you've developed as a woodworker, including the things like, oh, I just found this like really amazing machine for like next to no money, but it's like not working right now.
And it's in Ottawa.
Yeah. And it's,
and it weighs 2,000 pounds.
and it weighs 2,000 pounds. And I have a basement shop.
Yeah.
So you wonder why your back is sore. But yeah, so like, is your intent with the YouTube channel to sort of like capture that sort of, for me, it's almost like I've not done this before, but it's figure outable. And so I'm going to document the figure outable part.
Yeah, I think so. I've always really enjoyed making videos of things. I guess I just had this natural urge to want to document it and have this, when you make a video of something, it's really got a bow tied on it in order to deliver the thing. Like if it's a piece of furniture, you can always like tweak it. You can, come back to it and do something. Whereas if you're making a video, it's sort of like one shot, you have one chance and you get to package it up. And then that's like a little snapshot of something, of a place you were in your life. And I've always just really enjoyed that element of making videos of things.
I wonder if that's why I struggle with video, because I always want to like tweak things and make improvements to them and make them better. And it's like, if I videotape it, it's like, well, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
But that's okay too.
I think so. It's okay to have a snapshot. And I think the cool thing is then you get to see the progression, like you were saying with the channel. I think that's a valuable thing, to be able to track where you were and see where you've come from, see where you are now, and how have your skills developed compared to what you were hoping they would be able to be like at a certain point.
Right. Yeah. Right. So 9-year-old Jamie tries to build a very complicated cabinet, and it doesn't work out. But then you do the high school thing where you make the iguana surround.
Yes.
And then then what other like sort of formal, if anything, and again, formal education doesn't mean anything other than it's like, you threw good money after bad. But like, where did you learn all the skills that you have?
To be honest, I'm self-taught.
Amazing.
Other than the high school woodworking class and that old guy that showed me some things, I'm self-taught. I really enjoy figuring things out and setting, like you said, setting yourself on a challenge and seeing like if you can do it. Like the problem-solving element of it is really fun for me.
That's super cool, because like you do things that are like hard.
Try to.
Right. And a lot of people don't. Like a lot of people sort of stick to, the basics. And like, I always say, if you only ever learn how to make boxes, well, then you're just going to make cubist furniture, right? Like you're not going to sort of spread out into other things. But you do like wacky lamination things. And we're going to have links to sort of like some of your videos. The one that sort of stands out for me was the one that you did for the cello podium. And it's like on the face of it, like when you look at it completed, it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, you did this thing and you bent it around and you made it into a shape and all this other stuff. But it's like, when I saw that video and we shared photos and stuff as you were building it, and you were like, this is how I'm bending this and this is how I'm doing it. And it's like, I've been to school and I've learned how to like do bent lamination and stuff, but you did it in a completely different way that I've ever seen. I mean, other than like boat builders and stuff,
Yeah.
because of the limitations of size is what
Yep.
they're dealing with. But in essence, like that thing took up this entire bench space.
Which was the reason I did it. It is sort of is edging in on boat building because like a cello podium is about 5.5 feet long and maybe 3 feet wide or so. And so the size of it, I think you're referring specifically to the in-bag versus out-of-bag forming.
So
with
talk
the
about
vacuum bag.
that because people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so like the fact that you basically put the plies in the bag and then clamp the bag to the form.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about.
Sure. So if you're working on a larger piece, one of the limitations is just the sheer weight of the form, because in order to deal with a vacuum pressure, it needs to be pretty substantial. Otherwise, it'll just crush under the vacuum pressure. So if you had, 5 foot long and you do half of it at a time and then join them together, but that's going to be a heavy form and it's going to be awkward. And, you start to get to the point where I'm not even sure that the vacuum bag would have had enough pressure. People say vacuum bags have a lot of pressure. They do, but it's not infinite, like, like it might not have had enough to really close it in.
Well, because it would have had to be so tall.
Exactly.
So you'd end up needing this monster bag just to even make sure that like it would actually do what it was meant to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so if that's the in-bagging style. And for smaller pieces and for doing just regular veneering and all that, in the bag all day, every day. But if you're working on a larger piece and you want to be able to use like a lighter form, it just needs to follow a contour.
Right.
Then you can make a custom vacuum bag. I guess technically you could order one, but I couldn't actually find one in the dimensions I needed. So
because you needed like long and narrow.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird bag size, right? So I actually learned this technique from watching Padula. He does some forming of this style where you make a custom vacuum bag out of just vinyl tablecloth.
Okay.
Yeah, you just buy vinyl tablecloth, and you can get butyl seal tape.
Yep.
And just J-roller the seal tape, and put in you can get a vacuum port that you just put a small puncture in the bag, and the vacuum port attaches, and throw your laminations in there, and just loosely clamp them to the form, and then the vacuum pressure will take care of. All it has to do is suck the laminations together rather than sucking them to a form. You know, the work of putting it to the form is done by the clamps on the outside. It'd probably be a lot clearer with some visuals. But.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I mean, thank goodness you made an entire YouTube video about it. Which is fantastic because it really did sort of like. Because the way you were explaining it, like when we were messaging and stuff like that, I was like, I don't quite understand what she's doing. But then like when you started sending photos and stuff, so it'll make perfect sense when you see the video, because of course you're going to check out the video. But it was a unique approach, and it solved the problem of exactly what you were saying, which is that like you would have this massive form and like you would have to make sure that it was good. And this also allowed you the ability to sort of like experiment a little bit with the shape too, right? Because instead of making the form and being locked into the form, you could just simply move the uprights, and you can always do a dry glue up and get it to like do what it's going to do and make sure it's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah, you're not going to have lamination snapping or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, are your radius are your laminations thin enough? That's always a question.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah. And I was able to, there was a couple of the more extreme sections of the bends that I wanted to account for just a little bit of springback. So, like you said, I was able to move in those vertical standoffs in just a little bit.
Which is in the video.
You
talk about how you moved it in so that you
I wasn't sure exactly how much to move it. I should have guesstimated. I was using like a PPA glue for this.
What does that stand for?
What does that stand for? I can't. I'm blanking right now.
Oh, I thought you knew. Poly something adhesive. Let's go with
plastic,
it.
no, PRP, plastic resin adhesive, PRA, plastic resin. Anyways,
We'll have it
it's a
figured out in
plastic
the show
resin
notes.
adhesive. It's like Unibond 800
Right.
or
So like a urea
urea
formaldehyde
formaldehyde
type.
glue. Yeah,
Yeah,
so urea,
okay.
yeah.
So you
Cut
get
all that.
almost no spring back.
Yeah, almost none. And
Right.
that was actually my biggest worry because obviously I'd taken this beautiful piece of African mahogany, sliced it up, like I wanted all grain matched around. So I had this one board I could do it out of. And
Right.
so I was pretty nervous that, was I using the right amount of glue for these bends? Was the vacuum bag going to be able to actually close those laminations up?
Right.
Because it was only 8-quarter material. So, and I needed a certain thickness in the final product, so I couldn't make them super thin. So
Right.
you're always doing this sort of balancing act of like bendability and wastage of material to sawdust when you're resawing.
Well, yeah, because for every lamination, you're losing a lamination basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like it's you have room to move when you have 12-quarter, but if
Yeah.
you've got 8-quarter, then
Yeah.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I wanted to get both sides of the podium. It's like a guitar build. You do
Right.
them in halves, and I wanted to get both sides out of the same board, of course.
Yes.
To get that grain match.
Critical.
Yeah,
Critical.
Yeah, can you imagine? And you
No, I can't imagine.
can you imagine
and
it not grain matched?
I know. It would just be awful. It would look like a 1980s kitchen made out of red oak. It would, you know what I mean? Where the rails
Big
and stiles.
cathedral and
Yeah,
then the
yeah,
other
yeah. You know the look. Yeah, you don't want that at all. And I think that I think that you approach all of your builds with the same sort of mindset, in the sense that it's like you have this idea of what you want to do, and you want it to have a specific look, like the light fixture. And again, we can link to that video as well, but the light fixture that you did, which was all bent lamination work, but you didn't want to see seams.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's take something that's really hard, right, and make it harder.
Yeah.
By trying to not see seams.
Yeah.
And again, that was just, your brain works in a way that makes that problem workable. Whereas I think a lot of people faced with that information would be like, oh, you just can't do that.
Yeah. That was the challenge, right?
Right.
The fun is in the challenge. How do you make a closed, continuous lamination?
Right.
That's tricky.
Oh,
to get
yeah.
those lengths right in the laminations and achieve that. At some point I'd even forgotten about why I wanted to do it. It was just I'm gonna do this.
It's a good thing you're stubborn.
Yeah,
eh?
we failed so many times in the different attempts
Right.
to achieve this thing we want to do. But eventually it was successful, and cork was the answer.
Cork is always the answer. Okay, so if you haven't seen Jamie's videos before, I'm going to highly recommend you check them out. Not only are they incredible woodworking content, but they're incredible videography and editing as well, thanks to Rena, because woodworking videos can be boring. These are not boring woodworking videos. These are really good woodworking videos. So you got to check them out. But now we're going to ask some questions. And so we're probably going to do a shop tour of Jamie's shop at some point. And so you'll see the entirety of this. We're just in this one small corner, but there's a lot more. And we're going to do a video, and we're going to talk about the machines that she has and stuff. But suffice it to say that you're the perfect person to ask this question to. So this question came in from James, and I'm gonna preface this with that James was very detailed in his message, and so I've summarized it a little bit because nobody wants to listen to my grade 5 reading skills for too long. But basically, after more than 6 years of working out of a 2-foot by 11-foot space that he had to unpack and repack everything every time
I read
he
that
worked.
a few times over. I was like, 2 feet.
2 feet,
That's extreme.
2 feet. What is that?
Wow.
I can't
I'm impressed.
I could be in a 2-foot by 11 space, but that would be all there was. I could maybe hold a saw or something. But so he finally has an 8 by 20 space.
Congratulations.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
And so the shop is part of a 3-car garage He really likes cars as well. So the cars are in the garage as well. And he's going to have like an industrial curtain
Okay.
that basically he's going to separate the wood from the cars because he doesn't want the cars to get full of dust. And I get that. I get that completely. And then everything sort of needs to be on wheels so he can move it around.
Yep.
So he builds mostly furniture, and his first projects are 2 desks, a dining table, and some shelving. So like he's already going right into like long stuff, right? So his first upgrades will be a saw stop, PCS, and a mini Gorilla dust collector, which will help with the dust.
Yep.
And now he needs to figure out his milling machine. So right now he has a Porter cable jointer and a DeWalt 735 planer.
Yep.
And so his original plan was to do an 8-inch like Powermatic jointer and then eventually a 15-inch planer. But for less money and floor space, he could get a like a Hammer 16-inch combination machine, like the jointer planer combos. And so his question basically is an 8x20 shop simply too small for 2 full-size machines? Everyone says standalone machines are better, but would a hobbyist actually notice the difference? Are there concerns about the combo machines staying set up and aligned? So, I don't know. What do you think? 8 foot by 20? Like,
yeah, that's a lot bigger than the previous space.
Yes, it
but
was.
It's still, you definitely want to be conscious about your machines that you're picking there. I love the DeWalt planer. I think that's such a great planer. It just, I think, like everyone, I think, starts with that planer and finishes like it's just a great planer.
I still have one, even though I have like a 12-inch combo machine. But like I won't get rid of it because it's the best planer ever.
Yeah, it does a very fine work. I find the almost non-existent snipe, and the only thing I really dislike about it is the noise. It's a real loud planer.
Well, and I mean DeWalt was always sort of tagged with that sort of like their universal motors are like screamers. Their routers were loud. Their planer is loud.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah. But no, that's a great planer. But so I love milling machines. I really do. And I have looked into that exact planer, the Hammer. So I think probably if it were my space, I would probably go with a combo machine. Just, the real downside is the switchover.
Right.
I would say that's the drawback there. You're going to, every time you want to switch over, and we all do it, we forget, I wanted to joint this board, or I need to take it down a little further, and it's in jointer mode. So that would, get a little bit annoying, but I think to save the space, since it's not a production shop, then depending on how much your time is worth,
that's true.
Yeah, I would personally probably go with the combo machine. I mean, you can find some really good deals on older machinery. If he say he likes cars, that may or may not mean that he's mechanically inclined and enjoys fixing them up. But my shop, almost everything in my shop is machines that I've acquired and that were old and I've fixed up.
Right.
I really enjoy that process of restoring them, and then you really figure out how everything works. For sure. And you can just dial it all in. So that's also enjoyable. So to have that, and if they're on wheels, then they can be sort of like pushed up into the wall. So that's a really tough call, and I think it comes down to evaluating how much is your annoyance level at having to switch it over all the time.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, if you have the space, it's nice to have dedicated machines.
Sure.
And I don't have the space necessarily for 2 separate machines large enough that I would be happy with. So I have a combination machine. And it for the reasons you already sort of cited, is that like you forget that you wanted to joint some edges or whatever, and it's set up for planing. And like the longest thing that takes is moving the bed up and down.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So like when you switch from the jointing operation to the planing operation, the bed has to be down like 150 millimeters or 6 inches. And then you can rotate the thing over, but then
Yeah.
when you go to like use it, you have to like raise it up
Yeah.
so that you're at it, because you know who's planing 6-inch stuff. And so excuse me. So for me, it's like it's an interesting sort of conundrum, because it's like, well, that's not, it doesn't seem like a big deal until you have to do it a few times.
Yeah.
And people come up with these clever little 3D prints that they put on the wheel so that they could put a drill on
Yes,
it,
yeah.
and they can like whiz the thing up and down.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's not that big of a deal. Would I prefer to have separate machines? Yes. But an 8-inch jointer, like most of the wood we're using, or a lot of people are using, is wider than 8 inches.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then if you have to flatten that by hand now, right? Because for the longest time, I didn't own a jointer. All I did was I just flattened one side with a jack plane and then stuck it through the DeWalt.
Yep.
Right? But then when I was able to get the combination machine, now I'm at like 12 inches.
Yeah.
This A3 he's talking about is like 16 inches.
That's awesome. I
Which
mean,
is
that's huge.
huge,
That's so
right?
great. Yeah.
Like if you were to try to get a 16-inch, because your jointer's 12, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like a 16-inch standalone jointer is a massive, massive machine.
Yeah.
And so like I wonder about, like you see a lot of combination machines, like, you know, even not this size, that are like, they're pretty helpful. Like they're, and it's one of those things where it sort of forces you to sort of plan your workout a bit more, so that you're like not having to go back and, you know, set it up just to do a thing like a quick joint or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I wonder, like, would it make any sense to have like a compact 6-inch little jointer that you would just use for doing edge work,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then everything else can be done
Keep
with
the
the
porter
combination.
cable.
What's that?
Keep the porter cable.
Right.
Maybe one of those flip top benches or something.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then do it that way. So I don't know. I don't think, like, I think if you had the space, like I always would recommend that somebody use like individual machines. But I think in this case here, because even though he's graduated to a much bigger shop, it's still pretty, like it's galley style.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So 8 foot by 20, that's like a long, narrow shop.
Yeah.
And so and the nice thing about the combination machine is you can put that right up against the wall.
Yep.
Right. And then as long as you keep it free, you know, on both sides, you know, I think you're okay.
Yeah. I think if you did get the combo machine, the first time you joint a board that's 16 inches wide, you'll be very happy.
Yeah.
that you
Yeah. You're
have
never
that
going to
thing.
be like, oh, I should have never bought this thing.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, though, is I have heard that some combo machines can be finicky to get set properly.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to like say certain brands or what have you, but like some of them are notoriously difficult. And if a little bit of research will show you which ones those are.
Yeah.
But definitely like look into that, because if you're constantly having to like doubt whether the fence is square anymore, or whether or not you're getting snipe or those sorts of things, like I don't enjoy snipe. I don't really get snipe with my machines anymore. And it's because like I make sure that they're set up as well as they can be.
Yep.
And then something like the 735 is like basically snipe free.
Yep.
Like as long as you have like sharp blades, you know, normally that's the only problem with that machine, because then the feed rollers start to struggle to pull it through because the blades are too dull.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, yeah, I would just make sure, you know, because some of the machines he's talking about here, like the Hammer A3 or the Minimax FS41, like these are serious machines.
Maybe even the A331, which is a 12-inch version of that hammer,
Right.
would be doable.
Well, yeah, because
it's even
12
smaller.
inches that's
that's a good size jointer. Like I've not had to joint anything. Nothing's sort of exceeded the capacity of my 12-inch jointer.
right. And I'm in the same boat, because like it wouldn't even benefit me. Like, I mean, I feel like having a 12-inch combination machine, I get 12 inches of joint and I get 12 inches of thickness planing, because even though the DeWalt can do 13, well, if I can only joint, you know, 12. But I mean, I think you're right. I've never maxed my machine out. So
I have done 12 a number of times actually,
right. Okay.
but I've not for some reason needed over that.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Interesting. Well, you don't see a lot of like super wide boards unless you're into like, like slabs and things like that.
Yeah, true.
Right?
But then it's you're doing a router sled or something.
Yeah, you're doing something else. So I guess 12 would be good as well. But I mean, again, like even the 12s in some cases, there are issues with having to it's not aligning properly or it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So it just adds a layer of complexity. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the difference between using like a fixed blade knife when you're camping versus a pocket knife that can fold.
Yep.
Right? You've got the convenience of having it in your pocket, but the fixed blade knife is always going to be better or more stable while you're using it, all those sorts of things.
That's right, yeah. I mean, I should just qualify that I've not actually personally owned a combo machine.
Right.
But you have, and you would get it again?
Yeah, space-wise, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I don't think, again, I think you have to really consider your material and what you're planing. It's kind of like when we always sort of, people always talk about with table saws that you need like 8 foot in feed, 8 feet out feed. And it's like, well, who are these people that are cutting 8 foot pieces, right? You may have to do that from, rarely time to time, but for the most part, even like a desk, like you're not going to build an 8 foot desk, I hope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if you are planning on doing that, just understand that you're still going to work in the same 1 square foot that you, because there's going to be stuff everywhere else, right? But it's like a workbench, right? Like a workbench needs to be big enough to support like 80% of the work that you do.
Yeah.
And so the problem being, of course, is like, well, how do you know what you want to do? Right? Like I think some days it'd be great if I just like started making like cat urns for a living.
Sure,
and it's like, I just need like a small box because, cats are pretty small. Well, most of them are anyway, but you don't really know that going in, especially if you're sort of, starting out or whatever.
Yeah.
But as for he talked about a little bit about like what a hobbyist noticed the difference. And it's like, that depends because the hobbyists, sometimes their time is of more value.
It's true.
Because you may work full time, you may have familial responsibilities, you have kids to deal with, dogs, cats, in-laws. And so if you only get an hour, like maybe you don't want to be spending your time changing a machine over. Yep. But I think space here is what is trumping everything.
I think so. And the capacity. Also, though, maybe think about your personality type. Certain personalities are more prone to being annoyed at things being slightly out, while others might be okay with that.
Right.
Like a little bit of snipe might really bug one person.
Right. No, that's a really good point, actually, because like I know in the past I've worked in shops where the machines did have a little bit of snipe and like it always sort of irritated me. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I'll just like plan for it.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But some people get really annoyed by that.
Yeah, I personally don't like snipe. I try to adjust my machines, my jointer and planer, to have none, and it's basically there. Like it's rare. Maybe if the wood is extremely flexible and the rollers push it down a bit, it might cause the tiny bit, but generally no snipe. And I think a lot of it is in the adjustment. Before I got these machines, I was actually thinking of getting the hammer.
Okay.
But being a basement shop, I was going to have to like take it apart.
Right.
And I was in contact with Hammer, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, where it's more complicated, right? You can't just pull the table off.
Right.
It's like got this crazy adjustment procedure to get everything aligned, and that I wouldn't say that totally scared me off, but it was definitely a consideration.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, when you watch the videos of you like bringing these machines in, like you're able to strip them down. I mean, not that it helped a whole lot because
it made it possible.
It made it possible, but it still took quite a bit to get the machines down here.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have a machine that doesn't break down quite that readily, and then on the other end of it is all of this setup time that you have to like contemplate, that can be a real problem.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying is that space is the biggest consideration at this point.
I think so.
Yeah, you're not going to notice. I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference. I mean, having to switch from one to the other You know, it literally takes under a minute.
Yeah. I will say one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why nobody has come up with some sort of, you say they have a 3D printed thing and you can to attach a drill or whatever, but we're in an age of Arduinos and all this like
Right.
cool little electronics. Like I think it'd be cool if you just had this thing that lived on it and you just push a button and it just goes to its spot. Why does that not exist?
Well, we're going to have to talk offline about that, because if anybody can do that, we didn't really talk about that. Like what you do, like, because I mean, woodworking is an amateur pursuit for you.
Yes.
So what do you do for a living?
I write software for an education technology company, actually,
Right.
called Crowdmark.
Okay.
It's an assessment platform that universities use to like run final exams through
Okay.
for grading.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know you've adopted some of the things you're talking about, Arduino and programming and stuff, into some of the machines.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Here in the shop, which we're gonna see more of when we do the shop tour. So I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, maybe we need to have a discussion about how that happens.
Yeah,
Because
it just makes so much sense, right? And
it does make
the,
sense.
the higher end machines have these built in. You know, if
Yes.
you go to like a Felder level,
Right.
yeah, the Felders, I think the
Yep.
formats, all these have all push button.
Or Martin.
Martin, yeah,
Martin
and
has them for sure. You just punch in a dimension and it just does its thing.
yeah, but and it doesn't necessarily could do that, but I think it could be a lot simpler than that, right? It could
Just a home position.
Yeah, two positions, just using a simple little limit switch, and then boop, 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 you just hit a button.
I love that Jamie thinks it's that simple, because I don't think it's simple, and I don't even understand the words that are coming out of her mouth right now. But I don't need to understand, because I have somebody who does understand. So listen, we're going to take a quick break just to so Ben can read some ads and just to break things up a little bit, and we'll come back and we'll answer some more questions.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
A table saw accident happens once every 9 minutes in North America. SawStop's revolutionary safety system detects skin contact instantly, stopping the blade in less than 5 milliseconds before a life-altering injury can occur, turning a potential catastrophe into nothing more than a scratch. And right now is the perfect time to buy a SawStop cast iron table saw. Buy one before July 31st, and you'll earn up to a $450 credit to spend in the SawStop store. Excludes mobile bases and brake cartridges, shipping not included. Learn more at sawstop.com/credit. When you're working on a project in the shop, you're putting in hours of effort, measuring, cutting, sanding. The last thing you want is for a project to come apart because the glue didn't hold. I've had it happen, and all I'm going to say is never use a bottle of questionable glue on a project. The regret isn't worth the risk. That's why so many pros keep a bottle of Gorilla Wood glue on the bench. Here's what sets it apart. Higher solids for a stronger bond, dries a natural color with less yellowing, and of course it cleans up with water. The bond of Gorilla Wood glue is actually stronger than the wood itself, and it's easy enough to use for any skill level. While you're at it, grab Gorilla Wood Filler too. Glue for strength, filler for the finish. The complete woodworking solution. Gorilla. Tough enough for the pros, easy enough for everyone. Order yours today at GorillaTough.com/ShopTalkLive. That's GorillaTough.com/ShopTalkLive.
Okay, we're back. Welcome. We have coffee now, and we also have very nice very nice coasters. Yours is Purple Heart.
Yep.
Mine is, what is this, mahogany?
I think that was, which one was that? We got so many different species of woods for this project we're working on. It's this mosaic.
Right. You're doing this huge
panel.
You can't see it, but there's this massive parquetry project on the bench right now.
Yeah.
And we don't want to show it off because it's a video that you got to check out. But this is super cool, and I've been sort of seeing this sort of grow and get bigger, and so that's pretty exciting. It's going to be a great video. But yeah, we have the most expensive coasters known to man, which is fantastic. Okay, so we do this segment where we call it favorite tool of all time this week, because of course normally it's like,
Yes.
there's a podcast, fairly regularly. But because you're a guest here today, like you don't get to do this every week. So, and basically it's just like, it's not necessarily like a particular brand or anything. It's just like a tool that you just, maybe you reach for all the time or you use all the time, you'd be lost without kind of thing.
Okay.
The whole, if I was on a desert island and I could only have one tool, this would be it.
Okay. I think the really, really boring answer, and I'm not going to say this is my answer, but I'm saying it would be the boring answer, would be a dust collector.
True. Fair enough.
Can you imagine like the amount of dust with no dust collection? I mean, you just look at these old shops and dust was just spraying everywhere.
I can remember being on a tour of a cooperage. It was the last cooperage in Australia. And you walk into this place and there's mountains of sawdust everywhere. They literally just shovel it into a pile. And then when it touches the ceiling or you can't see out the window, they like move it.
Yeah.
And it's like none of the machines had dust collection. The jointer had this like automatic pusher.
Oh, I love those.
That would just,
those are so cool.
They are cool. Ishitani Furniture
I
has
love
one.
every time. I'm just like,
love
oh, that's
it.
so
It's
neat.
like, that'd be great. I wouldn't hook up a dust collector just so I could play with that.
Just to see that.
Okay, so a dust collector, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know.
But what's your real answer?
Okay, so I feel like you kind of led this a little bit like it was supposed to be a favorite hand tool, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't say a hand tool is my
could be
favorite
anything.
tool. I would actually say probably my planer is my favorite tool.
We talking the thicknesser?
My thicknesser, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And why is that?
So that was one of my machines that I rescued out of, it was in a garage, an uncovered, unenclosed garage.
Like a carport?
Like a carport, yeah, carport. And it was just in there, and there was, stuff piled all over them. And there was this little online ad for it, grainy picture. But I was like, I know that planer.
I know what that is.
That's a General 330, and I'd been looking for one for a very long time. So it was a big thing to get it. I had to rent a liftgate truck. I had not seen it, and I was at the commitment level where I went and I rented this liftgate truck. I drove it to Ottawa. I met some guy in his carport.
Amazing.
Yeah, with
not sketchy at all.
Not
The grainy
sketchy at all,
photos.
yeah.
You don't even know if it's a joiner for sale.
Yeah.
Right.
And so sort of like dug through the rubble and it was there. And
Amazing.
So we ended up being able to get it on the lift, and the lift actually was able to lift it. I needed a 2,000 pound capacity liftgate truck to actually bring it in there. And it was just really fun restoring it, and it just runs so well.
It does.
It's such a beautiful tool. You turn it on, and like the nickel test is like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like easy.
You can do the dime test.
Yeah,
with
you can
that
do the
one.
dime test with it. It's
For
just such a
sure.
beautiful tool, and I upgraded it to a helical head cutter, and I've just dialed it in so nicely. And every time I turn it on, and there's this like little foot pedal you use and flip the thing to engage the feed rollers.
Right.
So it's from the 80s. I think it's 82, which
Okay.
is a year younger than I am.
There you go.
So we're sort of in this together.
Right. Yeah, same vintage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love that thing.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard it run many times and it's like super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fun to use.
Yeah.
It's so fun because like just you can just throw anything at it and it's just like, what's that?
Right. So mine is actually not even near as exciting as that, but I have this collection of Pika pencils.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so I have gone into this really hard. And I have like a number of different, like the sort of thick leaded dry ones and there's like one in red, one in white, one in blue, one in black, like just regular graphite. And then I also have the 9.9 millimeter ones, which are like super small. And again, in all of the colors.
Of course.
Because it's like, I don't want to like have to change the lead every single time like a Neanderthal. So I basically had this like, I just keep buying them. And then I 3D print these little holders and then I screw them to the side of my bench. So I have this like holster of like a dozen Pica pencils.
Cool.
And it's like, I don't know what, and again, like there's lots of pencils out there, but for some reason the formulation of the lead and then the colored stuff is really good because like a lot of times it's either too chalky or too waxy. And this seems to be like, right down the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Have
right
you
down
used
the middle.
the ink ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've got them all. Got them all. I taught in Australia one time and Pica actually sponsored my class. And so the students all got like a Pica package. And then they gave me the master package, which came in this like beautiful, like zippered.
Like first one's free kind of thing?
Yeah, that's what they did. They knew it. They knew what they were doing. They were, it's like the first time, I'm just going to buy a Festool sander in the vacuum.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm done.
I don't need the other stuff. And then 10 Festools later, and I show up here with all the podcast gear and a sustainer. Yeah, it happens. Okay, that's good. I like that you're planer because that's a critical piece of equipment. And when you can get one that like runs so nicely and like, does all the things, and that's 15 inches, right?
20.
20?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's got a 5 horsepower single phase motor. So I did need to get a dedicated circuit ran to it.
Sure. We're looking at it right now. That's what we keep looking at.
Yes.
We can see it. You can't.
Yeah.
But you will see it.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll just come down here and I'll just wind the table up and down just for fun.
I'm so glad to hear that I'm not the only person who is like brushing their teeth and is like, oh, something in the shop, and then go into the shop.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, because I use one of the electric ones, right? So they it does it for you.
Yeah.
So you don't even really have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Amazing. You want to do another question?
Sure.
Okay. So this one's from Henry, and he says, I'm a new listener who's discovered your podcast in the last 2 weeks and have been absolutely loving it thus far. Thank you. Glad that you are loving it. I binged about 45 episodes already during that time.
He does like it.
Wow. I hope it's the older ones that didn't have me on it, because man, oh man. In those listens, I've heard a lot of proselytizing. It's a great word. Regarding bandsaws, and I have to say I'm well on my way to being a convert. I've long yearned for a bandsaw, but have frequently talked myself out of purchasing one, but no more. I don't have too much money to spend, so I spend time scouring Facebook Marketplace and considering low-end models. So my question is as follows. What should I look for in a bandsaw? And perhaps more importantly, what are some of the pitfalls or red flags I should avoid, particularly on older used models? It seems like they're primarily broken up by wheel size. How does that impact its performance? Wouldn't the motor be more relevant in that aspect? Where do we think the sweet spot lies? I've been going back and forth with myself on whether or not I should just get a smaller benchtop model that can handle some cuts, but I feel like a small joint. But I feel much like a small jointer. I should just wait until I have enough money to buy the bigger model. So again, because we haven't seen Jamie's shop yet, Jamie completely supports the idea of getting the biggest possible machine that you can cram down your stairs. As I look at the SCM bandsaw.
Yes.
Now, bandsaws, like, I think you agree that it's like one of the most important machines.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we don't have to sort of try to sell Henry on this.
I think we maybe should talk for a moment about how we first started talking. Do you remember?
I don't remember. How did that happen?
I think I sent you an email saying bandsaws are for babies.
Oh. Yeah, that gets my attention. Yeah, that's for sure. That would get my attention for sure.
Yeah, we were at a wood show and we got talking.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And Vic was basically I would say, almost anti-table saw to me. And
Yeah.
but no, this is all jokes. But yeah, I also love bandsaws.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think in a lot of cases, bandsaw should come before a table saw.
Yeah.
Like if you're
Yeah.
looking to sort of spend money in dedicated space and stuff like that. The problem with bandsaws, and it's not only with bandsaws, I think. The problem is machines in general, that if you get the smaller version of something, and I think we've talked about this before, it's like the quality level drops. And so you can't, like if you get a 10-inch bandsaw, well, there are some okay 10-inch bandsaws out there, but none of them are like good bandsaws. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you get the same problem with like table saws. A lot of times, like you have a big cabinet saw, but then when you go down to a smaller saw, like the fences seem a little chintzier, the guides seem a little chintzier. Like, and so I don't know why we can't just make really good quality machine. Probably because they would be just as expensive as a bigger one, and then who's going to buy the small one?
Maybe, yeah.
I think is what it is. But I feel like bandsaws are one of those things that, like, if you get a cheap one, like my dad used to say, if you buy good quality, you only cry once.
Buy once, cry once.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you buy cheap, you cry and cry and cry. And bandsaws.
Yeah. I do need to push back a little bit on something you said. I don't think it's the size of the bandsaw so much. Like maybe if you start getting into really big ones, you're going to get something with some mass and whatever. But they make, there are some, I'm not going to name any names, but there are some 18-inch bandsaws. I had one. And it was just too lightweight.
Right.
It just, the motor might say 2 horsepower. And it's not. It's just not. Like the actual power that is, you try to resaw and you realize, no, there's no way that this thing stamped whatever, and things are moving. It can't tension a blade properly.
Right.
So I think you can buy a smaller bandsaw that's high quality, much higher quality than a larger bandsaw. So it isn't just about the size, I don't think.
Well, you're right. I think in a lot of cases too, like, I mean, he alluded to like wheel size sort of being how things get broken up. And it's like the most common, I think, is the 14-inch bandsaw, right? And that, of course, refers to the diameter of the wheel.
Yeah.
And I think because there's so many of them on the market, you get like a whole sort of swath of like really, really good ones and then not good ones. And I find in that case there, like if you spend the money, you get a pretty good machine. But you're right. When you start going up in size, you may think, oh, I'm going to get an 18-inch bandsaw, right, which is bigger, more heavy duty, all that other stuff. But then, like, they didn't scale it up.
That's right.
And I think that's probably like a supply and demand thing. I think, like, they probably sell, 14-inch bandsaws like 4 to 1.
I think the problem is that it doesn't look any different.
Right.
The 18-inch that is of a lighter gauge steel that, because of the fact that it's 18 inches, it's so cantilevered out that it can't tension like a carbide blade. There's no way it could, it might be able to like mount a carbide blade, but can it tension it? No. Right. Whereas a smaller bandsaw, you run into some other issues like with smaller wheel sizes, metal fatigue and things like that you can run into, but at least, like an old Delta bandsaw or an old General bandsaw that's 14 or 15 inches. Yep. Those are great machines and they have some mass. So if there's misbalances, it's going to dampen that a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I definitely recommend that people sort of buy the best that they can afford when it comes to a bandsaw. Because if you buy the Amazon brand, bandsaw, I've used one of those and it's not pretty. Yeah. And you run into the same problems that you're describing, which is the reason why it's so inexpensive is because they've reduced the thickness of the metals. They've they've skimped out on certain sort of engineering qualities of the geometry that,
wheel balance.
Right.
That's a really important one.
Oh, 100%.
And if you're looking at a bandsaw, I would highly advise that you see it running because you'll know right away if it's balanced or not. Right. You can do your own balancing of the wheels, but it's nice if they are
Well,
know,
it's not as easy too to do your
not
own
super easy.
balancing.
No,
I mean,
no.
that's why you bring your car to
That's
the
right.
dealership or to the garage to get them to balance the wheel.
You don't want to have to.
You don't want to have to do that. Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. So I mean, there's a lot of information available online about older bandsaws, right? Like if you go with a General that was made in Drummondville, Quebec, like they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Certain Delta models, right, are going to be fine.
Yeah.
But then some people, like with the Delta model, because it doesn't have this sort of unibody design, because it's like a split casting, a lot of people will put that riser in, but then that motor didn't have the power to do that. So if you're going to put a riser in, you have to put a better motor in.
Yeah.
Or a stronger motor in, because it's going to, or a more powerful one, I suppose, not a stronger one. But like, if you're going to start like amping things up, then you have to sort of take it with you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot more tension, and those are all things that you have to worry about. So it's like, I think it's okay to look at at vintage ones, and I think vintage machines, you can get really good deals.
Yeah. If you're mechanically inclined,
Right.
it can be quite enjoyable to restore them.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because this has come up a couple of times since we've chatted that about like fixing up machines and all that other stuff. And I remember having a great conversation with Raleigh Johnson, and he was talking about this triangle of like what you need to get into old machines. And he's into old machines. And he's like, it's 3 points. So you have to have the know-how, you have to have money, and you have to have, what was the other one? Time. Right? And if you're missing one of those, it becomes difficult.
The know-how, though,
You can learn.
you can learn.
If you want it.
If you, yeah,
Right.
I feel like, especially older machines,
Yes.
there's not that much to them.
Right.
Like,
There's no capacitive screen.
that's right.
Don't get me started on capacitive machines, the screens on machines.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. Like, I mean, but if you don't have the money to repair it,
Yeah.
or you don't have the time,
But it might just need some bearings that you can get
Right.
for next to nothing.
but you don't know that. And if you do, and if you're a little bit lacking on the skill, you don't know that until you know that.
That's
and then
right.
all of a sudden you need this, and then, and then it's like when people fix up hand planes. It's like, yes, there are some hand planes that are worth fixing up, and I can tell you which ones those are, but that took me years of like fixing crummy ones.
Yeah.
Realizing, oh, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have done this.
There's lots of online communities, though, where you can, like vintage machinery
For sure.
sites and forums that you can, and people love talking about things and giving advice.
Oh, they sure do.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of
Yes.
salt as well, though,
Yes.
right? But yeah, I think that I think there are a lot of companies that are making a decent bandsaw these days. So a new one to me is not problematic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is the table flat? I mean, even that's like a common thing that people have to struggle with. And it's like, if you don't know how to check all of that, right? I can remember going with a friend of mine to look at an old machine, and he had this whole kit. He had like a straight edge, and he had feeler gauges, and he had he had a set of like a stethoscope thingy with a pin on the end of it, so he could like listen to bearings and things. And it's like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're looking, if you when you said you found that machine and you just sort of showed up with a truck and it's like, let's hope this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's sort of that, you could have got it here and found that there was something like critically wrong.
Yeah, there
with
could
it.
have been a cast. Like, I think the most disastrous thing with these older machines is if there's a casting that's broken.
Right.
And cast iron is brittle, and
Right.
these machines have maybe been around for 40 years or more. And if internally, there's a broken casting, or there can be little things that are more tricky, like oil light bearings in these older machines. They a lot of times didn't use ball bearings. They'll have
like they're little like cylinders.
Yeah, it's like a little, it looks like brass.
Yeah, okay.
And it sort of like impregnates with oil. It's very porous. And and you need to oil them. Yeah, there's actual oil ports on the machine to go into. They're called oil light bearings. And so, there's certain things like that on older machines that that can be a little trickier
Right.
to repair. Not impossible, but trickier.
Well, and at the same time though, like really fun.
Really fun.
If you've got the
If
time
you-
to like play around
and you
with
enjoy
it.
it. Like, it depends. Like, do you just want to woodwork? Or
Right.
do you also like enjoy machines and like fixing them up and knowing how stuff works? Like, not everyone does enjoy that. Like,
No.
I mean, I've got a good friend here in Dundas that like doesn't, just wants to woodwork, and that's totally cool.
Right.
But yeah, if you do enjoy fixing machines, it can be really fun.
Right. So I think what we're saying is like, I don't recommend that anybody just sort of like buy the cheapest of the cheap.
Yes.
Just to like, I would much rather hear somebody like save their pennies for
Yeah.
a year or something and like get something that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And then as far as like old versus new, I think like it's okay to be looking at older machines, but you also have to understand that with that comes, the potential for things that you're going to have to repair, whether you're paying to have them repaired or you're repairing them yourself.
Yep.
And that's something that you have to be ready for.
Yep.
A lot of times with a newer machine, there's customer service, even though that's somewhat of a oxymoron nowadays. You can sort of like, you have something to fall back on. If you buy a 40-year-old machine, it's like you get what you're going to get.
Hope you have a machinist friend.
And hope you have a machinist friend. Exactly. That's what everybody needs is a machinist friend.
Yeah, if you can find a machinist friend, find
Do
one.
you have a machinist friend?
I have a great machinist friend.
Thank goodness.
And actually, when I was doing the planer, I was able to send the rollers to him to turn down.
Was that the person in the video?
Ross? No, he was not in the video.
He wasn't in the video.
No,
okay.
that was my neighbor.
Oh,
actually.
okay,
Yeah.
great neighbor.
Yeah, he's a good friend. Yeah, yeah, he was. It was really good because I'd actually tweaked my back at that time, and he was very, very helpful in lifting some of these big, heavy parts.
Yeah, no kidding. But we live in the same city.
Yes.
Albeit at opposite ends of it. But I don't have a machinist. So
well, now you do.
Now I have a machinist. Perfect.
Friend of a friend is your friend.
There you go. Exactly. So basically what we're saying is that like for most hobbyists, I think a 14-inch is probably lots. You can't really get much smaller. There's one company I'm aware of that makes a 12-inch, which is Record Power, which is a really good machine. Then there's 10 inches. Most of the 10 inches I've seen are a little bit light duty.
Yeah.
Have a maximum of maybe like 4 inches of resaw, and even then it's really struggling.
Yeah.
And then you can go up higher. 17 is a common size, 18. But then there's also what you talked about, where it's like if you don't go with like a reputable company, you could end up with a very lightweight, big machine.
Like literally look at the weight of the machine.
Right.
And compare it. That's a in woodworking machines in general, maybe not hand tools, but milling machines, table saws, things like
Mass.
that. Look at the mass. Yeah,
Right.
it'll tell you a lot.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
And even like, even on smaller things, like I just recently upgraded to a 60-year-old drill press.
Yeah.
And like, it's this tiny little thing, but it weighs a ton.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, that's because the castings are heavy, the table is heavy, everything's heavy.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the advantages of going with old iron.
Yeah, there's something nice when things have a lot of mass. Like working with it,
Right.
it gives a really nice feeling of precision and predictability with what it's going to do. There's no jumping around. There's no vibration.
Yeah, I hate when my machines jump around.
Yeah.
Especially like when you're trying to like chase after them around the shop because they're like bouncing
here.
everywhere.
Come here, table saw.
Yeah, get over here. But it's true. Like when you turn on a machine, it shouldn't like flutter or like vibrate or like have this space in its like spooling up where it's like it vibrates and then it like it should just be like
Ideally. Yeah.
Ideally.
Like, sometimes you can't control it. Like certain motors will have like a certain RPM
Right.
in there as they're spooling up where it might hit a little bit like a resonant frequency. So I wouldn't say that's like a deal breaker.
No.
But certainly while it's running,
Right.
you want it to be running,
smoothly.
smooth and stable.
And feeling good. Like
yeah.
Yeah. You shouldn't get that funny feeling like I don't trust this.
Yeah, definitely don't want that. Yeah. Yeah.
So there you go. So don't cheap out. Save your pennies for a decent one.
Yeah.
14 inch is a good place to go. And like a lot of people chase resaw capabilities, but it's like, unless you're resawing 12-inch material or whatever all the time, you know, I wouldn't really chase that too much.
And that's more horsepower of the motor. Like,
Yeah.
like,
And blade choice.
and blade, of course. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of machines that they might have like 18 inches of resaw capacity nowadays. Cause like the companies know that people like
That's
that.
the number they want.
That's the thing. I'm sure you've noticed this.
Yeah.
Like old machines, resaw was not a thing.
No, it's not.
It'll be like a 30-inch bandsaw with like 12 inches of resaw.
Yeah.
Now you'll have a 20-inch bandsaw with 20 inches of resaw.
Right. But it has a capacitive screen.
Yeah.
So everything's good now.
Yeah. But so the capacity is one thing, the actual capacity of the machine, but then you look at the motor size. And what's the sort of rule of thumb I've read? One horsepower per 4 inches of resaw.
Oh, wow.
So if you're wanting to resaw, 8 inches, have a couple horsepower.
Okay. My bandsaw might be underpowered then.
I don't know. Maybe I might be.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, that stat could be off, but
right.
Yeah, there's a rule of thumb.
I love it. There's always a rule of thumb for stuff like that. Okay, so let's finish off. This one's a little bit easier. I forgot this paragraph. He said, "Thanks so much for the hours and hours of content to accompany during work hours. The vibes are always so on point and everybody's passion comes through and it's absolutely contagious." I agree. Even I listen to the ones that I'm not on because I don't need to hear myself for an hour. But I always find like certain videos, your videos, Ishitani furniture, certain videos like make me go into the shop. Like I get up and I walk to my shop. There's nothing I can do about it. And then also like the podcast, I find like when I'm not on it, I find it inspirational. So cool.
Gets things flowing.
Yes. All right. So let's, it seems like a simple question. And maybe it is, but when does it make sense? And this is from Daniel. When does it make sense and when does it not make sense to send carbide tipped router bits out for professional sharpening? And I'm going to come out and say right off the hop, I have never sent a router bit out for sharpening.
Table saw blades.
Yes.
Yes. Router bits, not so much. A straight bit I have hit with the diamond stone.
Okay.
Just to kind of tune them up before I'm making a critical cut that I really want to avoid tear out.
Right.
That being said, I don't actually even use straight bits that often anymore. It's pretty much always a compression bit if I'm temporary routing.
Which you're not going to sharpen yourself.
Which you're not that, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're probably not, you're very skilled if you can sharpen that.
Yeah, boy, that'd be something else.
Yeah, so, but I as well have never sent a router bit back for anywhere for sharpening. I actually don't even know where I would send it.
Most places that you can send a saw blade can do it, I think.
Yeah.
My problem has always been that like the second you sharpen it, you've changed the diameter.
For sure. It's no longer a flush trim bit.
Right.
It's an almost flush trim bit.
If you want a 1 millimeter offset bit, have we got a deal for you? Which is right. I mean, flush trim bit, that's critical, right? That dimensions be the same.
Yeah.
But like, even if you do like a round over, you know what I mean? Like that is bearing driven. So basically anything bearing driven to my mind is out.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to use forget about the bearing and then just like use a fence.
Yeah.
Which you could do, but it's a lot more difficult to set up now. Any straight bit is going to be, to me, is no good because if you've got like a specific like quarter inch, right? And then you go and take it to be sharpened and now it's like, I don't know, whatever fractions, because fractions are fun.
Yeah.
But if it's like 0.5 millimeter under, right?
Yeah, that's no good.
No good.
But there's a difference between, sharpening where you're actually grinding.
True.
And honing.
Well, honing, I think, is what you're alluding to, is what you do when you're like, I'm going to do a critical cut and I just want to make sure that this is, like I do that. I spray some oven cleaner on it first and get any pitch or any burnt bits or whatever. And then like I inspect the bit to make sure that it's not discolored or anything like that. Oftentimes just cleaning your bits and like huge, giving them a quick pass with a diamond hone is lots to keep it going. And you're not going to remove enough material for it to be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Cleaning the bit is going to potentially take you a long way. Like it could feel dull, but it's actually still sharp. It's just full of pitch.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Bandsaw blades are like that too. Like oftentimes they get pitch on the side of the blade and then like it starts to heat up a little bit because now you're causing some friction and then all you have to do is clean it. Same thing with table saw blades.
Yeah, especially if you're cutting a lot of softwoods, like pine. If you cut any pine or anything, it'll fill with pitch very quickly.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
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 I think for roundovers and things like that, I was as you were talking, I was thinking about like normally when I do a roundover with a router bit, I will still sort of like touch it up with sandpaper, right? Because the router bit sometimes will leave lines or whatever. So I think even in that case, a quick hone with like a diamond stone could work really nicely. Because I find roundover bits and chamfer bits really dull very quickly.
They do, yeah.
It's frustratingly quickly.
I've noticed that as well.
Yeah, especially chamfer bits. Because I think with a chamfer bit, you're always hitting like the same spot.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so you end up with this like dull area.
Yeah.
And then no matter what you do, like if you go, then that explains an awful lot.
Bearing.
Yeah.
If you're using the bearing, that is.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Because technically you can have that anywhere. Like if you use a fence, you can use different. You could have the bit fully extended and then just.
But a lot of times you're not. It's like a curved surface or something.
Right.
So chamfer bits are really frustrating. So I have hit chamfer bits with a diamond, little diamond file.
Interesting. Yeah, because like even though it's carbide, like you're still going to like wear a section out, and then you'll get like a super crisp area, and then an area that's a little fuzzy.
Yeah, that little like 1/8 inch area.
Right.
Of the chamfer bit. It's just like, come on.
The one you use all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like they just need to make 1/8 inch chamfer bits and just be like, okay, they're disposable
make it
now.
really cheap. Yeah.
Right. That would be a good idea. Yeah. Router bit companies.
There you go. Hey, yeah.
Figure that one out for us.
Yeah. I rarely would use a router bit to make that large of a chamfer.
Oh my goodness, no. I would use my jointer. I would use the bandsaw. I would even use a table saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gasp. Whew.
I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
Yeah, my goodness. I have a
I don't know you.
reputation to protect. Who are you? All right. Well, so I think what we're saying, Daniel, is that we don't do it. Some people do. And again, some people send bandsaw blades out to be sharpened. Again, you can do that, but then you also run into the problem where like you're losing kerf, right? So you're losing a little bit of set. And then now it's going to be a little bit thinner. And I know Michael Fortune used to have this rotation. He had like brand new blades, and then he had blades that were sharpened once. And then he knew that those had like a thinner curve to them.
Okay.
And then he had bandsaw blades that were sharpened thrice.
Okay.
And those had no set.
Oh, okay.
And so he would use those as joinery blades.
Okay.
Same way some people, have you ever heard people using a meat and fish blade?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just no set, and you get a nice clean cut, but only for so far.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what he used to do in order to like sort of economize things. But I feel like I haven't paid to sharpen a blade, but like a bandsaw blade, but I can't imagine it being worth the.
Yeah.
Unless you like
carbide.
Carbide, yes. But if it's just a regular old blade, I feel like you're probably getting pretty close to just replace it.
Yeah, you were saying the set changing. I guess with a carbide blade, that wouldn't be the case.
No, you're right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it might a little bit, but not.
Would it though? I guess I'd have to look at the geometry of the tooth. I guess it is sort of trapezoidal, isn't it? So if you did take this time,
I think you would lose a little bit, but not the same way you lose like when you lose set.
Yeah, like on like a bimetal blade or or a spring steel blade. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not something that I've ever done or would ever contemplate doing. But I think the critical thing to keep in mind is that if you do send it away, they're not going to do a light hone like you're doing. They're going to grind it.
Yeah.
And then did they grind it accurately? Did they grind both sides the same?
Yeah.
because that'll get funky. Because I've experienced router bits that were not.
Oh,
And they, like, you want to talk about harmonic vibration.
I bet. Did it chatter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, might as well throw this away.
Yeah.
But somebody was being sort of like frugal about it. And it's like, well,
Go change your underwear.
yeah, seriously. I mean, what's...
Routers are scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, you don't want to put something off balance into it and then hope for the best.
Yeah.
You know?
I wonder if you can sharpen a spiral bit. I wonder if there's any service out there that can do that. Because they're expensive.
Well, they are, because the geometry is bananas on them.
Yeah.
When you look at them, it's like, how did somebody come up with this?
Especially the compression bits.
Right.
They're so nice.
They're like
though.
coming... Oh, yeah.
I just love a compression bit.
I know.
It's so satisfying.
Every time I've used them before, but like every time I go to buy one, I think, oh, what else could I do with $300?
Yeah. Yeah, but then you make the cut like some critical thing where you can't have tear out on either end.
Right.
And it's just flawless.
It's the equivalent of an end grain cut with a hand plane that's been freshly sharpened. It's like it does exactly what you think it's going to do.
Yeah.
With no fuss, no muss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you know whether or not they can sharpen compression bits, let us know, because that'd be super cool to.
Yeah.
Or maybe we need to like figure it out.
Maybe
start a business.
That'd be quite the sharpening setup to do that.
Well, it would be. You'd have to. It would all be CNC, just like that. It would probably be just like cutting a new blade, basically. In which case, it probably wouldn't.
They would need to know like that specific bit, because they're probably all slightly different.
Oh, sure.
Gosh, that'd
be awful.
Yeah, that'd be awful. I would.
You'd have to 3D like map it first to like get all the geometry, and then.
The technology is probably not. Like, if somebody really wanted to do that, they could probably come up with a system to do that. Just like put the bit in, 3D scans it, and then it can sharpen it.
It can do anything. Well, we can do anything now.
Yeah,
I feel. Right.
You know, a lot changed when like Raspberries and Arduinos came out, where like, you know, anybody can like do electronic stuff.
Right. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, like, we only had, like, the little electronics kits, and it was, like, you know, you might be able to make, like, a little board or something. But, like, now I feel like, you know, I understand, like, that Raspberry Pi is not just a good dessert. Like, it's, like, you know, there's really cool things and they can be super powerful.
Oh, yeah. And everything's so modular now. It's like, oh, you need a sensor that does this? Sure, get that, and then plug it in, and they communicate over predictable protocols and everything, so you can just sort of plug it in. And
you're using words I don't understand again.
They can talk.
Anyway, and it's true. And I mean, I've seen examples of it here in this shop where like you can do really cool things. And I know, you know, David Bedrosian. Yeah. So he's up in Waterloo, and he's a retired electronic engineer, or electrical engineer. He's an engineer. He's going to kill me because I screwed this up. But like he has all kinds of like servo motors attached to things like his drill press table, and like he can like lift and lower and like do all these cool things that basically you're describing. But again, he has the background to know that all of that is possible. And so I feel like there could be a cool angle for you to sort of explore and help people explore that world, because a lot of people, you know, like I wouldn't shy away from taking apart an old General, right? But I would say that I didn't know what to do with like a Raspberry Pi or anything. And we've discussed, you know, different options for different tools and stuff like that. But it's like, for me, like for some reason that's like unobtainable as a woodworker.
Interesting.
And so, and I think, you know, you always tell me it's so simple. It's so easy to do this. And it's like, it is if you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Like anything's easy once you know how to do it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure brain surgery is pretty easy, you know, once you.
I wonder, do they say it's easy?
I had a surgeon one time tell me, he was in a class that I was teaching up at Rosewood, and he was literally a neurosurgeon. And he's like, cutting dovetails is way harder than neurosurgery. And I'm like, then I really went into the wrong business.
Either he's really good or I'm afraid.
Yeah. We'll release his name later. And if you, anyway. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like, he's like, there's no room for error. And I'm like, there's room for error in
what?
brain surgery? I don't know what to make of this.
I'm getting more afraid.
Yeah, right. I think this is a good time to end this.
Yeah.
So listen, thanks for joining Jamie and I in her shop, and keep on the lookout for a really cool shop video that will astound and make you feel like you need more.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thank you so much to Jamie for coming on the show. That was fantastic. Please check out her YouTube channel. It's a must-watch. Shop Talk Live is hosted by Vic Teslin and me, Ben Strano. This episode has been expertly mixed and edited by Jeff Rose. Mike Pekovich is Fine Woodworking's creative director. Bridget Gruber is our associate digital editor. Head on over to Shop Talk Live for show notes. If you can click that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube, we sincerely appreciate that. It helps juice the algorithm and it helps fix the algorithm. Go do the same on Jamie's videos. A 5-star review on Apple Podcasts helps spread the love. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Get some shop time. Be safe. We'll see you. Help breathe.